Well, that's what I did for years. It's a mistake. The cigar butt approach to buying stocks is that you walk down the street and you're looking around for cigar butts and you find this, on the street, this terrible looking, soggy, ugly looking cigar, one puff left in it. But you pick it up and you get your one puff. Disgusting, you throw it away, but it's free. I mean, it's cheap. And then you look around for another soggy, one puff cigarette. Big opportunities in life have to be seized. We don't do very many things, but when we get the chance to do something that's right and big, we've got to do it. And even to do it in a small scale is just as big a mistake almost as not doing it at all. I mean, you've really got to grab them when they come. You're not going to get 500 great opportunities. You would be better off if when you got out of school here, you got a punch card with 20 punches on it. Every financial decision you made, you used up a punch. You'd get very rich because you'd think through very hard each one. I mean, you went to a cocktail party and somebody talked about a company, you didn't even understand what they did or couldn't pronounce the name, but they made some money last week and another one like it. You wouldn't buy it if you only had 20 punches on that card. There's a temptation to dabble particularly during bull markets. In stocks, it's so easy. It's easier now than ever because you can do it online. Just you click it in and maybe it goes up a point and you get excited about that and you buy another one the next day and so on. You can't make any money over time doing that.
The mistakes that have been most extreme in Berkshire's history are mistakes of omission. They don't show up in our figures. They show up in opportunity costs. In other words, we have opportunities, we almost do it. In retrospect, we can tell that we were very much mistaken not to do it. In terms of the shareholders, those are the ones in our history that have really cost the most. And very few managements do much thinking or talking about opportunity costs. Practically everywhere in life and in corporate life too, what really costs in comparison with what easily might have been are the blown opportunities. I mean, it's an awesome amount of money. When I was somewhat younger, I was offered 300 shares of Belridge Oil. An idiot could have told there was no possibility of losing money and a large possibility of making money. I bought it. The guy called me back 3 days later and offered me 1,500 more shares. But this time I had to sell something to buy the damn Belridge Oil. That mistake, if you traced it through, has cost me $200 million. And it was all because I had to go to a slight inconvenience and sell something. Berkshire does that kind of thing too. We never get over it.
I might add that when we speak of errors of omission, of which we've had plenty, and some very big ones, we don't mean not buying some stock where a friend runs it or we know the name and it went from 1 to 100. That doesn't mean anything. We only regard errors as being things that are within our circle of competence. So if somebody knows how to make money in cocoa beans or they know how to make money in a software company or anything, and we miss that is not an error as far as we're concerned. What's an error is when it's something we understand and we stand there and stare at it and we don't do anything.
We made mistakes, we'll make more mistakes. We think in terms of not exposing ourselves to any mistakes that could really hurt our ability to play tomorrow. We are always thinking about, worst case situations. And on the other hand, we have a natural instinct to do things big, both of us. I think I've learned something over the years. I haven't learned more about a basic investment philosophy. I got that when I was 19 and I said, I think I've learned more about people. I think that improves, but I don't think it improves by certainly any conscious sitting around and focusing on what mistake did I make with that person or this person. I just don't operate that way.
Learn a lot from other people's mistakes. That is really a much more pleasant way to learn hard lessons. And we have really worked at that over the years, partly because we find it so interesting, the great variety of human mistakes and their causes. And I think this constant study of other people's disasters and other people's errors has helped us enormously. Don't you, Warren?
Oh, yeah, well, that's true. And that's what gave us some advantage over these people that had IQs of 180, and could do things with math that we couldn't do. They really just didn't have an understanding of how human beings behaved and what happens. 2008 was a good example. So we have been a student of other people's folly, and it served us well.
The idea that you try to time purchases based on what you think business is going to do in the next year or two, I think that's the greatest mistake that investors make, because it's always uncertain. People say, well, it's a time of uncertainty. It was uncertain on September 10th, 2001. People just didn't know it was uncertain. It's uncertain every single day. So take uncertainty as part of
being involved in investment at all. But uncertainty can be your friend. I mean, when people are scared, they pay less for things. And we try to price. We don't try to time at all. If I buy a farm near here and it turns out to be a terrible year and pests come in and there's no rain and all that sort of thing, am I going to sell it for half the price that it was selling for a year earlier when I know over the next 100 years there's going to be 90 years that are pretty good, and a few bad ones? It doesn't make any sense to try and time things that way, and nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow, ever.
If you owned an apartment house and you got to raise your rents a little, it was well located, and you had a good manager, you wouldn't dream of selling it. If you had a good business personally, the local McDonald's franchise, you wouldn't be thinking about buying or selling it every day. Now, when you own stocks, you own pieces of businesses, and they're wonderful businesses. You can pick the best businesses in the world. And to buy or sell on current news is just crazy. You're in a wonderful business. You got people running it for you. You know you're going to do well over 5 or 10 years. And to think news events should cause you to try and dance in and out of something that's a wonderful game is a terrible mistake. Buying Berkshire Hathaway itself was a mistake because Berkshire was a lousy textile business. And I bought it very cheap. I'd been taught by Ben Graham to buy things on a quantitative basis. Look around for things that are cheap. And that I was taught that, we'll say in 1949 or 50. It made a big impression on me. So I went around looking for what I call used cigar butts of stocks. And the cigar butt approach to buying stocks is that you walk down the street and you're looking around for cigar butts and you find this on the street, this terrible looking, soggy, ugly looking cigar, one puff left in it. But you pick it up and you get your one puff. Disgusting, you throw it away, but it's free. I mean, it's cheap. And then you look around for another soggy, one puff cigarette. Well, that's what I did for years. It's a mistake. Although you can make money doing it, but you can't make it with big money. It's so much easier just to buy wonderful businesses. So now I would rather buy a wonderful business at a fair price than a fair business at a wonderful price. But in those days, I was buying cheap stocks. And Berkshire was selling below its working capital per share. You got the plants for nothing, you got the machinery for nothing, you got the inventory and receivables at a discount. It was cheap, so I bought it. And 20 years later, I was still running a lousy business, and that money did not compound. You really want to be in a wonderful business because the time is the friend of the wonderful business. You keep compounding, it keeps doing more business, and you keep making more money. Time is the enemy of the lousy business. I could have sold Berkshire, perhaps liquidated it, and made a quick little profit, one puff. But staying with those kind of businesses is a big mistake. So you might say I learned something out of that mistake, and I would have been way better off taking what I did with Berkshire is I kept buying better businesses. I started insurance business, See's Candy, the Buffalo, all kinds of things. I would have been way better doing that with a brand new little entity that I'd set up rather than using Berkshire as the platform. Now I've had a lot of fun out of it. I mean, everything in life seems to turn out for the better, so I don't have any complaints about that, but it was a dumb thing to do.